And so are you really concerned about population decline in general?
I am, but I don't
Here,
want.
here and in the rest of the world?
Yeah, so it's the biggest issue in the world today. That's what I'm going to say. I think Elon's right there. I don't think there's much we can do about it. I once paid a researcher to look up the variables that result in population decline, and he said it has to be a rural religious society. And that's basically no industrialized country in the world. Nowhere in the world is a stable birth rate. And Africa is the only exception, and they're going down faster than the fastest computer models. So we make computer models, and they have really wide standard deviations. And in every country, the population's crashing faster than the most extreme computer model, and that's really really scary. And I frankly don't think there's much we can do about it. I think the people who are going to have kids will have kids, and then the system's going to naturally reset. But I think any social engineering never works in this regard. Where in Hungary they've put, I think, nearly 10% of their budget into this, and they've had no effects. This has been people have tried to have effect to control the birth rate, and it never works. And so my attitude is, I think this is going to be painful, but it's one of those things that's going to fix itself.
What did they do in Hungary?
So in Hungary and a couple other countries, they're basically paying people large amounts of money to have children, where I think once you have more than four kids, you pay no income tax. And it really hasn't had that much of an effect, which is surprising, but I believe it to be mostly like a rural urban split, because I grew up in a rural area, and like everyone had kids and it had a sustainable birth rate. And in rural societies, you just let the kids play outside. And when you're in the city, like you live in New York, where like an apartment the size of a horse stall is like 7K in New York. And so
Yes.
of course you're not going to have kids.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so there's like, what about through immigration? Like, can it, obviously not everybody can do, not every country can do this because there's obviously a hierarchy and winners and losers, but can some countries use like an immigration policy to kind of offset it?
I guess to a certain degree, but at the same time, the end come of that logic is getting rid of your own country, because you
Right.
have to increase immigration exponentially as your population goes down. And also, after a generation, immigrants assort back to the old population's birth rate. And this is one of the things that lots of people who think about the Muslims taking over Europe don't factor, that after a single generation, Muslims have the same birth rate as the native Europeans.
And what's the explanation for that? The low birth rates
Oh,
is it just comfort.
it's just cities. People don't breed if they're not religious, and they don't have cities, and they're in cities. So a lot of people like to say that the current demographic issues are only hitting white people, but that's not even remotely true. Where it's hitting Asia the hardest, China and Japan and Korea. And I've looked to those societies to figure out what the West might be in the future, because I saw the NEETs and I saw the 4Bs and I saw like the really really low birth rate, and I thought that, yeah, that's going to be us if we can't fix stuff. And even in the Middle East, almost no countries in the Middle East, barring like Saudi Arabia and Israel, have sustainable birth rates. It's ironic. Anglo-Americans stabilize at one of the highest birth rates in the world once they hit the bottom, because America is such a suburban country that you can afford to have more kids. Where even in Europe or in much poorer countries like Thailand or Iran, they stabilize at lower birth rates than Americans, because they're still living in apartments.
Right. So then I guess because China famously had the one child policy, were you
Yeah.
kind of saying that even if they had not had that, they'd still kind of be in
Oh,
trouble?
yeah. So you can look to other parallel societies like Taiwan, and because you have a term called the Cynic nations or the Confucian nations, in the same way you have the West, where like I would look to Germany or England as parallels to what happens in America. You can judge them in comparison because they're close enough. For China, their societies you can judge them with are Japan, Taiwan, and Korea, and they all have the lowest birth rates in the world. The one child policy, ironically, didn't have that much effect on Chinese demographics, which is nuts to think.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because I always would
Yeah.
assume that you're like, oh, that was this disastrous policy, and then you're kind of saying like, no, they would have been screwed
Yeah, let's
regardless.
let's compare China and Taiwan's birth rate. I think Taiwan actually has a lower because China and Taiwan are they're like America and Canada.
Hmm.
Um,
They're like
Taiwan birth rate
pretty
versus
similar.
holy crap, Taiwan's the lowest in the world. Um, yeah, I thought South Korea was the lowest, but Taiwan just hit a new low.
Wow, it's not good. It's not
Yeah.
good at all. What effect is the like invention of the like when you plot the kind of like wide scale adoption of the internet over this
Yeah, yeah.
like
So
does it kind of line up a bit?
the internet lines up really closely with male virginity, which is why I say that the dating issues are mostly economically downstream of dating apps, where uh, like 60% of people meet through the internet now, and Tinder is would be the second most unequal country in the world if it was a country. It would be behind South Africa and ahead of Venezuela. It's funny the two most unequal countries in the world are socialist. But so if you look at male virginity stats, 18 to 30, it jumps from 8% in 2008 to something like 27% recently. And
Whoa,
I'm assuming those numbers are undercounts because guys be lying about this.
sure.
And
Yeah.
like
Oh,
there's no way those
guys
stats
be
are
lying.
true. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I think the internet really hurt people for just meeting each other. But I would imagine, I mean, have you watched my Mouse Utopia video?
I have not seen it. No.
Oh, you should. It's one of my best videos. I stand by that video. It's like one of, in Wikipedia, when you click the first link in every single article, it will always ultimately lead you back to the article for philosophy.
Right.
So
Sure.
for my Mouse Utopia video, all my other videos kind of converge onto it.
What's
Um,
the premise of the video?
God, you don't want to know, but I'll tell
Yeah,
you.
let's
So
hear it, man. I'm on
Mouse,
full doomer right now.
you should grab a drink. But Mouse Utopia was an experiment they ran about 30 times in the late 60s and the early 70s when they were noticeably worried about population rise. Where there was a movie called Soylent Green made in 1971, and it was set in 2021, I think, something like that. And in this movie, America had 300 million people, and New York had 40 million people, and there was mass famine in the street, and the value of human life is so low that people consume human flesh and the wealthy keep prostitutes as furniture. It's funny to see 1970 look at our current population and think it would be this complete overpopulated dystopian hellscape. But I'm thankful to the Green Revolution. But that notwithstanding, they were terrified of population growth in the early 70s. And so they made this experiment for what the social effects of rapid population growth is. So they would put 9 mice into a cage that could hold 6,000 mice, and they'd give them um, perfect conditions, infinite food, perfect climate, no disease. Every single experiment, and they, as I said before, they ran this out 30 times. The mouse colony would reach up 2,000, with the tipping point being the total being 6,000. And each time this happened, the the mice lost the will to breed. There were male autistic mice who couldn't socialize. The women became dominant and masculine, and they refused to deal with men. There were sociopathic thug mice who would beat up other mice for no reason. There were homeless mice who would wander around the colony and get attacked. And each time, their birth rate collapsed to zero, and the mouse colony failed.
Every time at 2,000.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like around that number.
Yeah.
And are you kind of positing that we're past the 2,000 point?
I like to jokingly say that I don't know about climate change. I don't know if it's real. It could be real. It could not. But Miami is still above water. Denmark is still above water. Every single thing in Mouse Utopia has already happened. The birth rate collapse, the aggressive masculine women, the effeminate male mice, the just anything you throw a dart at with Mouse Utopia has already happened. We live in the Mouse Utopia timeline.
God damn it. Um, that's not good. That's
I
not good, Rudyard.
apologize.
No, it's all good,
Okay.
man. I mean, you know what? I do say because I think it is one of the like it is a telltale sign right now of like a fake smart person, like a stupid smart person, because they'll always say population growth is the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like someone will be like who will like want to appear smart will be like, there's too many people. They'll always say that, you know, like people who
Yeah.
go like a fake intellectual will be like, yeah, we really got to get a handle on this pop. And you know, I'm very much like, no, it's the opposite of that. Like
Yes.
we need more people. Now, obviously, there must be some. I know we're nowhere near like some sort of max population of this planet. Like,
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
you live in you're in rural Pennsylvania. Like, you go from New York, drive from New York to Philly. Like, most of it is just empty. Right, like
Yes.
you could. I think they said something like you could fit all the people in the world like side by side in like I don't know one state or something like all the people in the world. Like if you're building up and there's tons of room. But anyways, I always thought because I know a lot of like in comedy, a lot of like leftists and stuff, and they're always just like there's way too many people. I'm just like no. There's not enough people.
As
We
I
need-
said, chart go up, chart go down. We're in the
yeah,
chart go down phase.